and I'm going to let her say a little bit about herself.
Hi guys. Yeah, I'm Savi. I'm officially designated a vagabond as of a few days ago. Um, I am a veterinarian. I've been a veterinarian for 2 years. Working, I've been in the veterinary sciences for 10, either as a vet tech, a vet assistant, or some other form of animal handling. And yeah, still living life, I suppose. Crazy times, right?
Very crazy times. That is a fact. You all right, girl? All right. Make sure my dog's doing good. So, we're gathered here today to speak about the thing that has confounded all of us, the balance of physical, mental, spiritual health while in a situation that is absolutely batshit. To put it just bluntly, the overall demeanor of everybody has changed. The overall feel that you get just like from walking around now is almost accusatory. And yeah, it just creates a really negative space for people to live in. And we're here to have a quick conversation about it.
Yeah. I think I would say that the
Of course, 1 second, please. This is magic.
oh
I gotta send this out. 1 second.
okay.
Keep talking.
Okay. Never mind the interruptions. Uh so I would say that when we talk about mental health in times of a pandemic, especially when we have um the society kind of that we do here in America, kind of this individualistic society, you see the severity of the situation most prominently in times of crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I would say most of us um, as veterinarians are now dealing with on a daily basis because we have, on one hand, we have families who have never sat at home, who are now sitting at home and staring at their animals much more frequently than they ever have, which means that things that aren't emergencies and things that are emergencies are caught earlier. And on the other hand, you have severe life threatening emergencies that are now limited by finances more profoundly than ever before. And from the perspective of emotional, I guess, wherewithal, the ability to withstand a crisis, that has also been diminished in people. They're afraid emotionally. They can't cope as well as they would have 2 months ago. And that's what we deal with. Veterinarians are very much, we aren't on the front line. Uh, we're more like the rear support. And when I say we're the rear support, what that really means is that from our perspective as medical doctors, our drugs, our machines, our PPE are the first to go when a crisis happens. So a hospital requires more PPE. They turn to us to provide that PPE because, well, we just don't need it as much as they do. And
That
so,
I don't
what?
want to cut you off too much,
Mhm.
but that is another thing I wanted to talk about. The segregation of expendable. Sorry, I mean essential personnel versus non-essential. Like, how do you feel knowing that, like, as a doctor, you kind of put your, like, you put an oath to do this kind of sort of thing, but there's
Mhm.
also like a lot of other people who are essentially, and this is just my opinion, but are kind of spitting in the face of that effort by ignoring this whole thing or downplaying it or literally just, populating beaches with thousands of people. Like,
Yeah, and the hard part is that it's a double-edged sword because I would say that most of the nurses that I know, human nurses that I know, do feel as if there is a group of people who are just like, well, I don't care about you and you don't matter. I matter. And I think the problem is it stems from our society, as I kind of mentioned, from this individualistic society where I come first or my family comes first over you and your family. And there are people out there who believe that the only way to get over this coronavirus is to expose the populace. And to a certain extent they're not wrong. We all need to be exposed. So you're silent. I can't hear you.
thank you. All right. While I can't argue like the scientific truth of that, that is just like that's just the guaranteed way. You know what I mean? There's a better way. There has to be. I'm no, virologist or whatever the fuck they're called, but I, there's got to be a better way than just give it to everybody and see who dies. You know what I
Well,
mean?
and that's what Dr. Fauci talks about a lot is that this control the curve that they keep talking about, that people keep bringing up, with, I would say, a large percentage of people not really understanding what that even means. Um, but what it really boils down to is when you have a highly infectious disease that is uh, bouncing from people to people with limited clinical signs or no clinical signs, you're left with a large number of people getting sick very quickly. And the goal with this whole stay at home order that I feel like, people keep beating the dead horse about is the fact that we we want people to get infected at a slower rate so that when people do get profoundly sick, there is the medical staff, the protective equipment, and the supportive equipment to actually provide care for every individual who is sick. So if you control that, it it becomes a much easier process and less people die. But people don't want to hear that.
All right, that is like yeah, that's the very. I don't think it's that people don't want to hear it. I think it's that some people legitimately can't. They can't hear what you just said and digest it in a way that they understand. And
Right.
you know what I mean? And that's really what it comes down to. We've sacrificed the educational system in America for so many generations that when something like this happens and everybody needs to like understand in an inherent and intrinsic way that this is how this is done, this is how this should be handled, and this is the
Hmm.
best course of action. Like, oh hey, Vulture, what's happening, man? And I just feel this is lost right now. Like you said, the individualism has taken over. The ideas of we're only as strong as the weakest link, America United is on display as a complete fucking sham. Like, and the fact that we're supposed to be this giant world power, this has truly exposed us as almost a second world nation. We can't possibly be third, but we can't be a first world nation if we are unable, or maybe it's just the leadership, but if we're unable to handle something like this in an efficient way where we put our citizens first, then we are doing a disservice not only to the nation but to the world that looks at us as a first world nation, as a leader of the world.
Well, and I think part of it, and it really is a double-edged sword from the perspective of how do you control a populace in the country that is considered to be free, um, and
Thanks,
without
man.
stepping on rights. You know, in other countries, for example, I mean, like, China and things like that, these communist countries have full control of their populace. And if you don't listen in certain countries, you're dead. Like that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, like
They and
we've I don't know you, but I read stories out of North Korea where they're like, "Oh, you got tested positive, kaboom," and they just shoot the person. And I'm like,
like
that can't be real, but it's North Korea, so fucking maybe. You know what I mean?
yeah, it
It has people in that
I
mood,
don't
like,
know, but that's what it comes down to, is that our country, as confined as some conservatives feel that we are with regard to the stay at home order, we are still the freest populace, which is why we have the highest rate of infection, which is why we have, we're encroaching on the highest rate of death, because people are still free to go do whatever the hell they want. Like, you might get a citation, nobody gives a shit.
right? Like, and and that's the thing. All these people equating this to like tyranny and slavery are absolutely wrong. Like I know wrong is a definitive, like you're either right or you're wrong, but I feel like I should they're very wrong. You know what I
Well,
mean?
and
Like
yeah, a lot of it comes down to perspective. And again, to note on the topic that we're here to talk about, from a position of mental health, um, there are people who, everybody picks something. You can't. Compassion fatigue comes from what they say is having too many tabs open in your window. If you're going to care about animal rights, and you're going to care about uh, public health, and you're going to care about starving children in India, and you're going to care about all these things, at some point you break your support system, and people just irrationally snap in those moments. I mean, we talk about compassion fatigue in veterinary medicine every single day, because I can literally spend an hour to 2 hours with one client who doesn't understand what's going on with their dog, and I can go from feeling very normal to full blown depressed just from having a conversation, because all of my compassion went into that one person, and now I got nothing left for the 15 other animals that I have to see, but I still have to keep going.
yeah, and
And
that is like that's a very interesting thing to bring up is compassion fatigue because I don't think that it's something people even understand as a thing. Like you really as a human physically can only care so much.
yeah,
Like it people say that as like a derogatory statement, but there's some very real truth in it. If you go around caring, like putting your heart into everybody around you, eventually you won't have any self. You know what I mean? And that's what you're sacrificing when doing that. And now people are stuck in a situation where they all they have is themselves and their level. Like a very limited group of people, generally speaking, if you're staying home, and
right.
like they love them, but they want to take care of themselves, but they can't, and they're stuck in this position where they're so bottled up with emotions that it has to go someplace. And a lot of
Yeah.
people will look for any reason. Like you saw, there's like protests and marches and like all these gun carrying people going to state buildings.
Hmm.
Sorry, let me rephrase that. Gun carrying white people going to, because that's an important qualifier. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, and the thing that's not being addressed is that all of these people really just feel powerless. These are people
Yeah.
who are used to having dominion over their lives, that of the American dream. If I can do what I want when I want to, if I make enough money, I can go have a steak dinner 5 nights a week if I feel, you know what I mean? And they're
Hmm.
complete control. And now they're in a situation where someone's like, listen, control is nice, but now for some self control. And people are like,
Right.
whoa, fuck you.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about it too is that part of and I wouldn't put a statistic on this, but there's a large portion of this country that is emotionally unintelligent. And what I mean by that is that
Strong
from a standpoint
70%. I'm saying it right off the bat.
there's a large portion I feel of this country that from an emotional standpoint they cannot process these big feelings. Like fear and the lack of knowing where the ship is going and lack of control, all of that in an emotionally ignorant individual becomes anger because it's an umbrella emotion.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing that nobody's really discussing is all this is happening because everybody feels the same way, but nobody can pronounce, nobody can like put it into a way that they really understand. So these people who have all these emotions, they can't put forth are banding together on the one thing that they can understand, and that's anger. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And
yeah.
and people give in to anger so easily. Like,
Well, and it's easier for, I would say, people like us who, from a mental health perspective, have been underwater for our entire lives. That were forced to address issues because there was no other option. I was hospitalized in a mental institution. I had no other option. I had to do something about it. And I mean, you were in a similar position. It was either continue to be full of rage or find something else. And you
that's
chose
true.
find something else,
Well,
and you're better for it.
that's true.
But
Very true.
for people who have lived fairly stable lives, one or two parents, roof over their head all the time,
Mm.
support emotionally or not, dealing with everything when it comes to anger, that, or just living their lives emotionally shut down. I mean, I have a friend right now who, in my perspective, has been emotionally shut down since he was a child. He cannot address his issues. And it's manifesting now in these times of panic with increased panic attacks, irrational emotional behavior, lack of interest or even trying to speak with a therapist or trying to find some kind of relief. And it's a very toxic cycle, and he's got his family that's involved in this, and they are all suffering alongside of it because he can't address his problems. And it all comes out as anger. It all comes out as anger and panic attacks. And so he's either yelling or crying, and it sounds like a terrible way to be.
That's that's another thing. Like, this isn't just the emotions that you feel. This is bringing up things that you've buried. Like,
Yeah.
any time in your life that you felt helpless is going to be put on repeat like a broken record, like in the emotional warehouse that you have, that's haunted by all these horrible things. These the to go with the metaphor, the apparitions that are most affected by isolation, by powerlessness, are going to become so much stronger and louder, and they're going to affect more things, and
Yeah.
again, to use the ghostly metaphor, because that's really what this is. This isn't a physical threat. If this was an invading army, they'd be fucked. Americans would be out in droves. Everybody's got a billion guns,
Yeah.
But this is something you can't go out and fist fight, and Americans are not ready for that. Period.
No, I
And
mean,
like,
our scientists have been screaming for a plan even before Obama's like
mm-hmm.
half-ass plan. It wasn't even a half-ass plan. He like talked about it one time and then put some people in charge and built a book. Like that's not
Built a
that
book.
like that's and then of course you have another president that's like, well, this is bullshit, and just threw it out the window. And it's like, okay, well, we still have nothing. So if you're going to throw that away, you better find another option, because a pandemic, from the perspective of a pandemic, COVID is bad, but it's not as bad as it could be.
Like, the
Like
Spanish
imagine
flu was
imagine if
worse.
Ebola, yes, absolutely. Imagine if Ebola spread like COVID.
Well, the reason I say Spanish flu, specifically, and yeah, I don't want to think about Ebola spreading like COVID. That's fucking terrifying. That's like Black Plague status, like real talk.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I breathed around you. Now my fucking liver's falling out this hole in my side. That's dope. Um, but
You bleed out my eyes and
right?
everywhere
Are you
else.
crying? Nope. Just the Ebola.
Just the Ebola.
But the reason I bring up the Spanish flu is because that's something that's happened in our last generation's life. There are grandparents alive who lived through this. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Hmm.
our disconnect from that, our disconnect from our past, our disconnection from our heritage has kind of like stifled our ability to understand the situation, because there's a lot of people I've been reading who are like, no, once we heard this, it sounded so familiar, and it was, you know, and it was just like there was a lot of whistles that I remember as a kid, you know what I mean, thinking this is strange, you know. And it's like it made the article was just called "This is Strange." If you want to find it, I can't remember where I saw it, but it just compared, you know, the Spanish flu for them as a child, you know, and then for them as an elderly. They have the same amount of control over their universe right now, you know what I mean? But they have so much more understanding, and it's like just yeah, it's just insane. And hey, D family, what's happening? But our disconnect from our heritage has kind of instilled in us this invincibility. Like nothing in our past has ever hurt us. So obviously we're fucking immortal great beings over here in America, when that's just categorically untrue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we've had fires take down entire cities. Like real goddamn talk. America's not fucking invincible. One cow took out Chicago. All right? Like,
Well, and that's the thing too, is that goes back to that whole, you know, societal of individualism, where at some point in our American development, we went from very family oriented back, you know, I would say even as far back as the 20s, because I feel like my grandmother, she was very much family oriented. They lived through the Dust Bowl. They lived in a farm with no running water, and so they were all together, and they stayed together for a very long time. And it was, I feel like, from a generational standpoint, my mother's generation, um, and Generation X, that really started this individualistic process where we are going from people oriented to us oriented. And I will say that I feel that capitalism assists in that, in the sense that uh,
assist, it practically shoves it down the stairs. Like, what do you mean assists? Like, that's an alley oop, okay? You can't count that as an assist. I mean, it is, but yeah,
well,
like,
for you know, it feeds that, it's a feed forward loop. Like once it got started, it just took the hell off, and it was, and it still is. Like I can't order my Amazon. What the hell? You
yeah,
know,
like,
like
people are like, listen, I'm gonna storm the fucking state building with an
for my
AR-15.
haircut.
Yeah, because I needs to get my barber in there. My wife just doesn't do it the same. I miss Salvatore. Sorry.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It's like,
and
all right, admit you have a crush on a man that you miss, and let's get this thing over with, guys. Like, calm down the repressed homosexuality. But that's a whole different
well,
topic.
and priorities too, right?
Right?
You
Oh
know,
my God! I can't believe the same people who, what, 3 or 4 years ago when Trump first got elected, were like, these damn snowflakes need to learn that life is hard and it's not going to always go the way you want. And now they're like, we're going to storm the Capitol building and shoot the governor because I can't get a haircut. Like, that's a huge 180, you guys. You got to understand that. But
it's a pretty big 180. But that's that irrationality,
it
you know,
is. I really, like,
from the lack of control.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. This is another thing I specifically wanted to talk to you about.
Okay.
Jane Goodall. She
Yeah.
put out a paper, and the gist of it is that our disconnect from nature is one of the reasons.
Sorry. Give me a sec.
Yeah, Harley.
Harley. Yeah, that's a dog.
Our disconnect from nature has attributed to not only the coronavirus itself being formed through the, it was, bats, pangolins, humans, wet market, whole deal, but
Sure.
because of the disconnect and disrespect we have for nature in general that was created, but the reason it flourished as well, because there's no, there's so little ability to, like segregate or quarantine in any meaningful way in a lot of, and I'm not, I don't mean just in America, I mean globally. Like, look at
Hmm.
Brazil. It has one of the highest death tolls in America, or in the world. And it, and the leader is just like, what do you want me to do about it? I was wrong. Like, so unapologetic, as hundreds of, is like, I think it's up to like 40,000, 50,000 people have died in just a couple of
Yeah.
months, and
Yep.
it's it's absolutely horrendous that there's even the concept that this isn't real in it. You know what I mean? The handyman that was here helping with the thing, he was like, so he was just trying to ease his way into it, but he wasn't like a smooth guy. But the long short of it was he didn't think it was real. He thought it was all a hoax until I told him I knew people who had been affected by it, and he was just like, "Wait, what?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, man, this shit is like real."
Well, I had a friend too. I mean, my entire life, I mean, I grew up with this guy. He has always been Republican, which, whatever,
Yeah.
but I had a conversation with him not but a few months ago. It was like right as this whole thing started. And we were talking about COVID, and the first thing he said was, "I just don't understand why this is shutting down our economy. Like, if it's like the flu, why is it such a big deal?" And I was like, "Look, I was like, it's super infectious. I was like, I don't know how else to put this to you, but if everybody gets sick all at once, our hospitals are going to look like our fucking Walmarts, man. And that's why we don't want everybody infected in April and May. We want people infected April, May, June, July, August.
There's
Like,
actually
it sucks."
been a recent study that said it would take to do it in a sustainable, like, non everybody dying horribly way would be like 2 years.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's what happened with the Spanish flu. Is it rocked itself out for years,
Yeah.
and then I mean, and people are so catastrophic about it. Like, yeah, we have to be isolated in a way that some people can't tolerate, and yeah, we don't get to see our families as much. But the other thing about it too is that the Spanish flu lasted only a few years.
That's true. I mean, it took a lot
Like,
of people, but in the
yeah,
scope of pandemics, that actually, like, and the way it was handled was the way a lot different too. Like, people,
well, yeah,
until that fucking parade, people were actually
well,
kind of
yeah.
okay about it, and then
Well, I mean, it was what, like 300,000 people, and then it went up to like some
it
atrocious
was,
like a
yeah,
million plus or
yeah.
something.
Like, literally right after that parade, a whole city fucking died.
Well, and that's what they talk about is like that second curve is like because you have the first one, which we are on the declining side of that,
Yeah, but like
and it's
just barely. Like,
right. But as people started, and this is I'm in the pool of I'm gonna stay isolated as long as I can because I want to see what happens to the people who don't continue to isolate.
no, that's
Because
pretty much, yeah.
I mean, I walked into I haven't been to a convenience store in almost the grand total of these 2 months. Like, I haven't. Sean's gone shopping for the most part. So
Yeah, Beth
the other
basically
day
goes to
though,
pregnant hours at shopping places. Like,
yeah, and from that, just the one time that I went to Walgreens, I went and picked up a birthday card and some candy for one of my technicians' birthdays. And that was the first time I'd been in a retail store since all this started. And I went in my scrubs, in my mask,
mm-hmm.
and the only people who were also wearing masks were the store employees. Every other person was not bothering. And they are where that particular Walgreens is located. They are much more rural. They they don't they don't think it's such a big deal. but it
Well,
was
we're
very
not New
interesting.
York.
But it was also very interesting because I was in scrubs with my mask on, and anyone that I made eye contact with, I shifted. They wouldn't keep contact with my
Yeah,
with
because they're like,
with me.
oh, we're the piece of shit in this, and in this interaction, there's like a good and a bad and everything, and I think I know my position in here. You know what I mean? Like, it's the
And I
truth,
mean,
though.
I didn't say anything. I went in, I grabbed exactly what I needed. I was in and out like less than 5 minutes. But there was a bulk of people, like I would say probably 4 or 5 people that I saw who made eye contact with me, who would not, who would, with all of their might, look at anywhere else.
Like anywhere. Yeah, and that's the thing, because we don't like to confront in ourselves the fact that we know there's a part of. I firmly want to believe this, just because I don't know. Maybe I'm a fucking optimist. Maybe vultures, finally fucking getting to me, but I firmly believe that they have to understand they're making this worse in like some small way, just because their little bit of not helping is a little bit of hurting. You know what I mean? Like, this is a zero
Right.
sum situation. This isn't. It's either you are or you aren't. There's no middle ground. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And America is like built on the middle ground. Like, yeah, do this, but I don't want to, so I'm just gonna do this little thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's America.
Right.
You have the choice to do whatever the fuck you want, and people are now having minuscule choices taken away from them, and they're acting like they're fucking like,
Like we're communist
yeah,
China.
like we're communist, like we're out here welding doors shut. Like, they don't understand that was happening in China. They were straight up welding
Well,
entire apartment doors shut so people couldn't leave.
well,
Like,
and this leans towards, and I would say, and from my perspective, this leans towards kind of conspiracy theory type. Um,
oh God, I hate
but
living here.
there 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 was and I don't think he had any kind of credentials. It was just a guy talking. But he mentioned that, in certain of these communist countries, they are starting to um, track people. They have to sign in on their phone and confirm that they are quarantined in their home. They have to take pictures of themselves in their home. They have to confirm on their GPS that they are at home. And these grand scale tracking options are things that I would bet we're going to start to see, where people, where Big Brother truly becomes Big Brother.
Yeah, like where Big Brother's like, all right, you've been running around doing pranks and starting wars and stuff nobody cares about. But listen, this is a global pandemic, all right? You know what I mean? Because the truth is, like, America doesn't give a shit. Like, we just want to
Mm-hmm.
expand our capitalistic nature. Like, it's all about money. You know what I mean? The
Mm-hmm.
vision literally stops there. Like, I want
Yeah,
money. Okay, that's the end of my vision. Is, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And
Well, I mean, when banks can get bailouts, but hospitals can't get ventilators, that speaks to where our priorities
right
are.
when billion-dollar understand that they would have kept this money if not for the dude that owned Shake Shack giving it back. But billion-dollar corporations like McDonald's and shit were scooping up millions and millions, like hundreds of millions of dollars in that fucking bailout that's meant for small businesses. Just
Of
because,
course they
like,
were.
technically one restaurant, one little stop, like one McDonald's only has about 40 employees. Of course,
Right.
and so they took advantage of that, and like every fucking store, like it's
Yeah.
fucking
All the
atrocious.
franchises are
Yep,
different businesses.
and it's fucking disgusting. And this has just shown the rawest nature of of profits before people. You know what I mean? And all the thing they've rung so many bells they can't unring. People are getting free Wi-Fi for no. You know what I mean? People like there's they reduce throttle on phones. All the stuff that they made you pay to do before, they're just doing now because they could do it all along. They made you pay
Yeah.
for it because it cost them nothing to do.
Hmm.
That's why. And it's so bare, and part of me wonders if after this people are going to be like, all right, we wanted to go back to normal but like better. You know what I mean? Like, we understand
Hmm.
these are things that can happen now. Like, this is making citizenry better. This is making lives better. You're choosing to actively make life harder for like all of America, and I think at least all of America can understand that. Like, these people are against us, and I think hopefully if we can unite and eat the rich, we might stand a chance.
You might need the rich. There's only 1%. I don't know how many of us can eat a rich person.
Oh, trust me, I'll find a way. And it's not even the 1%. I'm taking the whole 10. Fuck it, the top 10. Eat,
Top
eat all of
10%.
them. The top 10% of America could literally buy the rest of the world. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Oh, yeah,
that's not
without a
even a
doubt.
question. And they choose to let Americans live in squalor?
Yeah.
The fuck is that?
Well, I mean,
And not pay
they-
taxes? And not pay taxes. And specifically shuffle move everything around so that they have no part of American, no part of America at all, other than, you know, like, it's just, I hate
like
it. I hate
corporate
it so much,
headquarters. I
right?
hate it so much.
And all these goddamn fucking cruise ships that fly flags in other countries so they don't have to pay the port fees for America, and they're getting American bailouts. And I'm like, listen, all right, I'm not a Republican, but you gotta stop doing shit like this because you're gonna make me sound like one.
Because you're gonna make me sound like one.
You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
it and all of that combined together, you know, again, it goes back to that: how many tabs are you gonna keep open? You know?
exactly. And that's the thing. They keep forcing tabs onto just everyday people, and there's no. And even if they ran out of me and Beth, we like to use the term spoons. You know what I mean? You only have so
Oh,
many
yeah.
spoons
I've
in your
heard
day.
that.
You've heard that one, all right?
Yeah.
And like you're hemorrhaging spoons the second you wake up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I'm a person with a very limited amount of spoons to begin with. You know what I mean? Like,
Spoon deficiency since day one.
exactly. So situations like this are like, okay, so I know how to deal without having any spoons, but I don't know how to deal with Beth not having any spoons. So that's its own thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So-
I think that's
And
from
she's
the
pregnant
perspective.
too, like,
Yeah,
so it's like
even less spoons.
there's
There's a tiny creature sucking what spoons she did have.
oh
And
yeah,
making it
no, that
their
thing's made of
spoons.
spoons, man. But
Yeah, well,
this
and
the whole
I'm gonna-
instability of it all, like,
yeah.
I saw an image. I wish I could find it so I could put it up. It's a little tugboat carrying a giant ship through. I'm guessing like it's like Erie Canal or whatever, because there's like
Yeah.
a huge cliff on either side, right? On one side, the cliff is COVID. The other side is economic failure, and you know the giant ship is playing video games, pushing right up the middle, and the little tiny ship pulling it all to make sure it gets there is weed.
It's weed.
And I'm like,
That's my
accurate.
life.
Like, people, everybody is realizing that they use a vice to get through the day, and alcoholism has been so widely accepted. You know what I mean? Like, there's whole shows dedicated to it, and it's just blah. You know what I mean?
Well, it drives that depression just straight up
It
into the
does.
ground.
It's like alcohol is a depressant. Like, you drink 3 glasses of red wine and you're lamenting not being able to go to fucking whatever. You know what I mean? In the most dramatic of ways. I'm speaking for myself, of course.
I can't get my hair cut.
Right? I need to see Enrique. You know? And it's absolutely like mind-boggling that
Yeah.
people whose whole cry is that we're Americans. You know what I mean? Being an American stands for something. And then the second you need to like live by that motto and stand by America, they're like, no. I mean, like, me and then America. You know,
Yeah.
and
It's not we, it's
Yeah.
us and them.
and I hate it because do you know how easy this would be if we actually like pooled together? If even just one street pooled its resources for, survival. Like, I'm talking, leaving little boxes of food where it's needed, like no real interaction, just everybody getting everybody what they need. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just real, I don't want to say communal, like hippie ass shit, but like the idea of a real neighborhood. We all do
but
for
giving a
each
shit
other.
about your neighbor.
Yeah, exactly. But like, it's the exact opposite. I walk outside and everybody is just like,
Yeah, right.
and it's like, okay, I understand the situation. You know what I mean? Everybody's real tense. You don't want to get the virus if you don't have it. Everybody's got, old or weak loved ones. This is scary times, and that's the thing. Everybody's seeing everybody as a threat. And for the first time, a lot of white people are starting to realize what it's like, even a minuscule amount, to be just a regular black person and every day where everybody's worried about what the fuck you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we get it. You don't like it. Learn the lesson.
Yeah.
But it's just entrenching them in the more horrible side of things. It's just, like you said, pushing them deeper into depression and umbrella emotions like anger. And anger comes out. It manifests. That's just what that shit does.
Yeah. Well, it's an outlet, and for some people it's better than crying. Like, so it's easier to break something than it is to work on your problem.
This is very true. I think every gentleman here has had a few holes in some walls at some point in their life, maybe punched a locker, maybe just punched a wall that didn't,
that testosterone makes it even easier.
It does. And I mean, I'll speak for myself. You've seen my room. You know there was holes all over it. Like I was an angry young man.
Yes, you were. I will say though that, and this, you can let me know how sensitive of a subject this is, but I feel like I have a lot of friends who are parents, and I would say I am the minority. And from that perspective, I feel like my life is in these pandemic times inherently easier. And I feel for parents right now, because these are parents that have grown up in a society of individualism where their kids go away and then come back and go away and come back. And they're allowed some of their own time. And now we're more like it was back in the 20s and 30s, where your kids are there every day and you best tend the farm or find something for them to do. They're going to destroy your house.
Yeah, all right, I don't know if this is like a flex or whatever, but I've been training 3 years for this shit.
But see, that's what I mean. Like my sister-in-law, she's got a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And
she just got rid of him, Jesus.
And yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. It's like,
I get that.
There was a system that took care of them for a significant portion of time.
Well, she got a 12-year-old. He can watch the 10-year-old, and the 10-year-old can watch the 6-year-old. There you go. Boom. Handle.
Except you don't want the 12-year-old autistic kid watching the others.
Nope, that makes a lot of sense.
He sets things on fire.
Nope, you got to keep an eye on that guy.
But from that perspective, and I will say,
Cloud9, fuck you.
I would say the men in my life who have boys are dealing with this better than the men I know who have daughters this pandemic.
Oh, I can see that, yeah.
Because my friend Sean, who has a daughter, he, from an anxiety position with everything that's going on, I mean, he's like got an artillery system in his basement. Like, he's ready to go to freaking war because he feels so guilty about introducing his daughter to this life of chaos. Like, I mean, he's got a shotgun the size of my body. And I just
that's what I was if this were an army, we'd fight it, but The invasion's already here. It's already begun. It's already taken root, and there's no enemy to fight other than our own impulses to be selfish, and we are failing miserably.
Well,
Like,
and then, on the flip side of this coin, you think about the people who are profoundly destitute. From our perspective, yours or mine, we both
oh
have a
yeah.
roof over our
Oh
head,
no, I
food
know
in
where
our
I'm at in
stomach.
this. I've actually been thinking about like where I used to be, and like if this
And
happened then, I'd be dead. It's not a
your
question.
home, like the homes that you stayed in, they're probably fucking closed. Like, where the fuck are you gonna go?
I'd be a hobo living on the rails. Uh,
See, and then you're getting, and then if you're like that, you can't self quarantine. You can't quarantine in a tent. And where are you gonna go get food? The soup kitchen? Because fucking 30,000 other
closed.
motherfuckers are there.
Yep.
And
Might
then
as
you
well be
think about
closed
the
around here.
immigrants. There are immigrants who are trying to flee war, trying to flee rape, trying to flee all of these things, and they get to the borders and they're closed because of COVID. Like, sorry, now not only are you a potential terrorist, but you might be carrying a disease. Please
Yeah.
go
So
back to where
there's
you came from.
and it's that level of chaos and turmoil. Like you said, I'll admit, as a father and like actively and to be, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it's there is this like what the fuck have I brought them into? Like if something happens, it's this is my fault regardless. Like I you know what I mean? And when you feel that level of responsibility for a situation you have no control over, it leads to some tense moments. Some
Well, I would assume a lot of anxiety sits in that pool.
yeah, I mean I'll say I'm fortunate. Like because of how I grew up, I've had a lot of like anger management and emotion training and shit like that. So, and I'm used to running on no spoons, and so it's just a
Hmm.
lot of this stuff is like, all right, I'm actually uniquely equipped to handle when shit goes to absolute crap. All right,
Hmm.
this is my time to shine. I'm good at this, and like so, and then with that in mind, there's a part of me that's like, I'm useful now. I haven't been useful in years, other than to my son. You know what I mean? When it goes back, I'll just go back to being useless. And I'm not the only person who feels that. There are people now who are being more useful than ever. Like a lot of nurses and things like that who have been
Hmm.
so just catastrophically underappreciated, and teachers and just janitors and things like that who have been so pushed under the rug, for lack of a better term, because it wasn't coming to my brain. And they're gonna go back to once again just being nurses or just being janitors. You know what I mean? Like,
Or just be the stocking boy at your
yeah,
local
just
King
be the stocking boy,
Soopers.
and they're not going to be seen as these essential personnel anymore. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
that said, I do love Cuomo for like he had a real Italian moment where because people were like, "Way to get back to work." He's like, "Then get an essential job." And
Oh yeah, I
people,
saw that.
yeah, and I was like,
Like, there are jobs. There are jobs. Like,
and they
stop.
want you. Go to them.
Yeah. Like,
And
stop bitching about your position and do what you can.
yes, marginalized. Thank you. That's what I was trying to get to, and it wasn't coming to me. Thank you very much. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, groups that have been, especially, you know what? I'm just gonna go on this little thing. Especially like white men in this are handling it the worst because they're used to, like I said, having like such a high amount of dominion over their lives. All right.
And not
And,
being marginalized because of
yeah,
something that
and
they
not being
have.
marginal, exactly, not being marginalized for something they can't help, and now all of a sudden, like I said, they're starting to get one inkling. That said, I have been talking a lot of shit about white folks because they've been bad through this. They've been real bad, but I do have to hand out a fuck you card to a lot of like the top level of like the black communities and shit like that who said that black people can't get COVID real early. Like there's a reason that black people are dying 3 times more from COVID than other people, and it's because they were told they couldn't get it. They had zero regard for it because they truly a large majority of people, especially at the time that I talked to, really felt like black people couldn't get it. Like absolutely in their heart believe that. Like a few people were
See,
educated, You know what I mean? But people, they believed it because, like, a lot of people were saying that on a lot of like respected media outlets. It's the same as people drinking bleach because Trump said maybe if we get some disinfectant in there. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same concept. And
Right.
now the black community that, you know, I'm not a part of, uh, is like, this coronavirus is bullshit, but they're not holding the people accountable who put the black community in that position. Yeah,
Yeah.
that. Thank you, Vulture. You, like, I'm an ally to everybody. My heart is big with love for whoever you are, as long as it doesn't hurt nobody. And this shit right here is just, it kills me because they were so ready to believe it. And part of me was like, okay, history. Do you know one of the main catalysts for the slave trade in America? South America and America, malaria. Do you know who couldn't get that? Black people. It has not historically worked out for black people not to catch a disease that white people are getting. I'm just saying that that's a historic fact. All right. So, like,
Well,
that had me in my own fucking space. Like, it was just, and he's right. It was all from a fucking troll, and then people wanted to believe it, and then when people said it
well,
unapologetically, they just went with it.
and let's talk for a second about how um, our wealth of knowledge is leading to the death of the expert,
Yes.
because a true expert on climate change, a true expert on COVID-19, a true expert can say whatever they want to say about a situation, and they'll be right because they're the expert. The problem is that now we have an ass ton of Karens who Wikipedia'd some bullshit, and now they know better than that expert, and they ain't gonna listen no matter what they say.
It's true. Karens are fucking horrible.
I
So
mean,
I've worked retail a
I,
lot. I'm allowed to have that prejudice. They've hurt me.
but I have family members. There's a large portion of my side of the family that is Mormon and Republican, and they, while they may be on the borderline of being a Karen, they don't think objectively, and they will listen to they whomever they feel is the top of or is the pinnacle of whatever that thought is. They're going to follow it, and in their case it's Trump, and it's like, okay, but he doesn't know what he's saying, and he's just spurting shit that he hears in the conversations with the doctors, you know and he's misterming things like that. The whole shit about people drinking bleach, the problem, he never said go drink bleach. Like, the president never said that. He never said inject it with disinfectant.
No, he didn't.
Like,
He said, "What if we, attack the body with disinfectant and light and heat?" Like, he was just literally
yeah,
throwing
but he
things at a
was
wall.
he was spewing things that he had heard from doctors who had said, we've tested it against this and we've tested it against that, and it works. And he was trying to go from, okay, well,
Oh,
this
hey,
works
King
on
Goat.
surface,
I'm glad you're here. I
and
hope your life's going okay, man. I know things are crazy. I appreciate you taking the time. I was worried about you. I was fitting to get at you on Discord if I didn't hear from you in the next couple of streams. So I hope everything's okay. Sorry for interrupting you, Sabi.
yeah, you're fine, you're good,
But
you're good.
I did want to address that because I haven't seen him around, and he's been a really dope part of my streams as of late. And I guess I kind of miss him. I miss you,
Sure.
buddy.
But I mean, it's just it
Yes,
drives me a
Vulture.
little
Yes, Apex
crazy.
after this at some point. She's got to go to Costco, but
Yeah, I do gotta go to Costco, and then I can text after Costco. But I mean, there's a lot to digest when it comes down to this information, and people just they hear one thing, and they roll with it. They don't question, they don't see where their sources are coming from. They don't question whether or not something they read is actually picked up
yeah.
on, by someone with some kind of stature in that topic.
Yeah, and me and Vulture were talking about this. They intentionally use terminology that isn't readily identifiable to regular people. Like,
Yeah.
you know what
Well,
I
and
mean?
that's
Back
part of
when
the
they used to
problem with the
call
expert.
like Muslims insurgents instead of saying Muslims, they had to say insurgents because people
Hmm.
had Muslim friends, but nobody. I don't know any insurgents. You know what I mean? Like, it's an old joke from
Hmm.
Cat Williams, and ooh, ooh, and yeah, it's just that's really what it is. They're intentionally doing this because while you have to understand the economy is at a standstill for the bottom half, you know, the bottom 70%. But because of that stimulus package, the top 30% are still making money hand over fist. Like that has been
Right.
the top priority, was keeping the top 30% of America absolutely unequivocally wealthier than they need to be. And
Oh yeah.
let the other 70% be damned. And that's what's been going on.
Because trickle down economics is a thing.
Fuck you, Reagan. And yeah, that's really like trickle down economics was supposed to be real, and this shit never ever happened
The
because
only way that trickle down economics would actually work is if the people at the top were actually give a fuck about the people at the bottom, but they don't. So they just
exactly,
keep all the shit at the
maybe
top.
if fucking Carter, maybe if President Carter was at the top, that shit would actually work. He's like the only person I can see doing that. All right, we're running a little long here. I didn't mean to
Okay.
get us going. I got my boy coming in. It's gonna start getting loud in here. So we're gonna leave with some closing arguments. I'm going to let you do yours, and then I'll close up.
Okay. Um, I guess as far as from the mental health perspective of the current situation, if you don't know how to best handle your bigger emotions, talk to somebody because handling it by yourself isn't going to work. It never does. So, and from the perspective of an overwealth of information, check your sources.
I don't think that could have been said any better. Check your sources. And really that's a beautiful thing because check your sources really isn't just about information. Check your source of love. Check your source of friendship. Check your source of fucking shopping. Make sure the things around you, the sources that make up your everyday life, make sure they're okay. Take a second to reach out. You know, not physically, but reach out with words. Send a text message. Maybe leave a nice note on a business. Say thank you for, staying safe, instead of fuck you for not having toilet paper. you know? We have to
Facts.
learn to let love be the umbrella emotion instead of the mop that comes in after the rain that the hatred and anger is, sheltered from. And that's something people really need to like intrinsically grab a hold of. The concept that we're not alone in this. We choose to be alone if we choose to be, but being a unit as a nation would have solved this problem a lot easier. But we choose to be individuals because we're told that's how we're supposed to do it. That's how we're
Hmm.
raised. Your hard work is going to give you your bonus, and nobody wants to help anybody else. Or not nobody, but you know what I mean. Few and far
Yeah.
between. You know,
Fair.
for every, we'll say, Mr. Beast, there's fucking 7,000 assholes who don't do shit. One of those
Fact.
7,000. You know what I mean? Like, and this is that situation which is really going to change hearts and minds. You know what I mean? I've had my own epiphany that I touched a little on Twitter. I'm not really going to go into that right now. I've found a thing that I have to do, and it's helped me tremendously in feeling these feelings that I've had during this. And it's regrettable that not everybody can have that. But finding a purpose and understanding what you're going to do is a key part of not only fighting depression, but beating COVID. Having something you can focus on that is bigger than yourself will yield better results after this than you can possibly imagine. I could go on like this for a while, but I want to cut it now. And I really want to appreciate Sabi for taking the time out of her day. I want to say hi to Sean in the background. I want to just thank everybody who showed up in the chat. Vulture, go Phoenix, you guys are fucking amazing. Thank y'all for coming in. I saw you, Loner. Thanks, everybody. We will see you guys later. This is Captain Valen reminding everybody that life happens in every direction. Let's keep our hands clean and our hearts open. All right?